Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Monster Hunter Wilds talk. Today we have a next discussion on one that I think is going to be more controversial as a topic for the game right now. The highest on that list is definitely performance concerns for PC release, but we've been over that. Now it's time to talk about the specific weapon that had its own sort of mini uproar. Of course, we're referencing Insect Glaive, the weapon that had its own minigame about collecting essences before you really got going. That minigame has changed in a big way. On the other hand, it's still the weapon that's the most aerial by far, thanks in large part to the whole bounce attack that sends you flying back up into the air over and over. Well, that's gone too. At least you got your bread and butter combo, you know, the infinite ground combo. Apparently they changed that too. And when I lay it out like that, it sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? But that's the thing. I think that's a very unfair way to approach the topic, even if I can clearly do it. The weapon has changed in big and honestly great ways as well. There's just clear sort of teething issues, and I hope that this beta can be their springboard to improve it for the launch. The new special moves, the way the Insect actually smoothly part of your combos and attacks now, the new way you can charge certain attacks thanks to the red buff, some of the massive burst it has. They obviously wanted the core gameplay loop to be different this time, more so than most other weapons. But maybe it's just backfired and maybe they went a bit too far. Ultimately, something has gone wrong for the community to dislike things so vocally, so what's really going on? That's what we want to talk about. We'll start with the biggest pain point and get it out the way. The balance being gone is bad, and I think most people can appreciate why very quickly. It's part of the weapon fantasy, a key part of being an Insect Glaive user. Being able to extend your time in the air somewhat endlessly with one button because it's fun. It's never been the best thing to do, but being able to reach those specific weak points, like say on the spine or up on the wings, that's even a useful concept with wounds in Wilds particularly. But being able to soar over the fight and evade certain attacks, no matter what way you look at it, reducing a key part of the weapon fantasy is bad, and removing a key function of a weapon so it just doesn't exist anymore, it doesn't work. It's not a good thing. Obviously there's still aerial gameplay to it, you're just kind of more pogoing around and coming down a lot sooner, but since it's caused such an uproar in the Insect Glaive community for a reason, you have to wonder, did they not know this would happen? The infinite bounce stuff in the air, it's always been bad DPS and probably would lead to IG players having slower kills for those that are leaning into it aggressively. Maybe they just want the weapon to feel stronger and to flow better, and so they made changes to avoid people having worse DPS because they're doing that. Maybe they didn't want to design the weapon around aerial DPS and more into the whole Insect and working together with that for basic combos and new special moves. The Glaive though was always a really fun part of the weapon, and in my opinion the more fun part of the weapon than the Insect. Cutting into that appeal to remove a key part, it's rough. Maybe they were just unable to lean into the aerial side of the weapon for Insect combos in particular. Like imagine if you were able to do what you're doing on the ground with a Insect, but mid-air smoothly. That's a cool idea. But maybe they couldn't do it, so we got this more grounded focus. So maybe they wanted to encourage players to do the grounded, more Insect related stuff, and the way they've done it's just backfired fantasy-wise. But has it been bad for the weapon? Isn't it good to have a better moveset, new moves in general, a more impactful Insect that works mid-attack? And the whole smoothing of the entire concept of the collection of buffs? Well, let's talk about that. I think that's actually a big issue as well that's maybe less obvious. The old style of aiming and timing the Insect to land on a body part you need to generate the relevant buff to then collect all three led to seemingly a rewarding feeling when you successfully achieved the triple buff. To manage your movement while managing the aim and timing and firing of the Insect correctly was like a whole part of the weapon outside of say aerial details. And they have reduced that too. It seems a lot of IG players, the older ones, have found issue with that, more so than the aerial stuff, because I guess if you're a serious IG player, you know, you're wanting to maximize your output, you're actually not spamming the aerial bounce all that much, obviously, so it matters less to you. Meanwhile, the skill and management of the buffs is now greatly changed, and maybe that's an issue. Was it maybe too difficult to get the 3 buffs in the old way though? Well, I'm not sure if it was too difficult, but I did find it very clunky. There were options like the Insect mark system that becomes unnecessary when you are confident and comfortable with the Insect aiming, as a way for IG players, newer ones, to learn. But compared to that, how are we getting the buffs now? Well, you just aim in with focus mode and attack, and do various attacks and combos, and the Insect will essentially go in unison with that, attacking, generating extracts, and bringing them back in a much more passive way, which essentially reduces skill expression. Really, you're just kind of aiming and fighting at specific parts, maybe the head, maybe the sides, maybe the back, and then you're going to get that triple extract pretty quick without much effort. So the challenge of managing your buffs is a lot reduced. Especially when we consider the new focus mode special attack, which gives you triple buff after a wound break. And yeah, that means you can generate lots of wounds around the monster and spend your essences probably on the rising spiral slash, then just aim at a wound, break it, and get all of your buffs back. Kind of comparable to the longsword in its focus mode, where you gain a spirit gauge level on a wound break. But even there's a bit of a skill expression because you can open multiple wounds and get multiple gauge levels from one strike with successful timing and aiming. Meanwhile, the new glaive, you just get all 3 buffs from 1 wound, which is pretty straightforward. On the topic of those buffs though, it does seem like you need the 3 buffs to properly function now, because the benefits are so big, the damage buff's so vital, unlocking the moveset. But ultimately, the entire idea of working around your Kinsect to generate buffs is mitigated a lot. You attack in the 3 locations, and you're mostly good. If you open a wound and avoid breaking it, and then time it to, generate back the triple buff after spending it, that works very well and is very easy. The Kinsect attacks, they're just kind of happening as you go. So a big complaint I see that I think is valid for your serious IG players is that reduced skill expression with buff generation and management. But there's another side to it. The opposite of big long-term IG players, it's new ones that are intimidated by the weapon or even find it really clunky. Like again, I do find it clunky the old way. I think this is better for new players as an important thought. To learn how to play the weapon, to generate, the proper function of the weapon, the buffs, and then basically repeat the new, more max DPS loop that exists. The new stuff is awesome, like the charging attacks being an important part of the moveset, be that grounded or in the air, the red buff being how you unlock those charge attacks as a key change and update, or say, orange buff providing flinch free, that's really nice. This all combos well into the rising spiral slash, the big attack that's consuming the 3 extracts. The thing is, with using that, you can get your extracts back on use. It's possible to blast it through a monster and get all 3 instantly. So that's a new DPS loop for the weapon, encouraging you to build and spend aggressively and making sure to get them all back every time you use Rising Spiral Slash. So with it being easier to build buffs now, they made it a key part to spend them more often. There's other stuff like Descending Slash, which can be used in the air or even on the ground as charge levels like Greatsword or Hammer. These can be charged during other attacks it sims, leading into more normal gameplay. I mean, there's lots of changes to consider here, but this is no guide, it's a discussion, so let's continue. For example, it is interesting to me that Insect Glaive didn't get any of the new core mechanics of Wilds. What I mean is like, say, it can't guard to generate the clash mechanic. It doesn't have an offset or one of those counters. It doesn't have a perfect evade mechanic like demon dodge or discerning dodge with dual blades and bow. And in terms of the button layout, I've seen a lot of criticism for the way they've changed which button does what in the air, or the awkward nature of focus mode aiming and Kinsect aiming at the same time. Maybe they're going to see the feedback on all of that and update the button layout again, which might be a bad thing, but if it is such a big issue, they have to try, right? But anyway, one final aspect of the weapon that Sims changed that I didn't know about until I looked into this for this video. They seem to have messed with the infinite combo. The classic light, light, heavy, which you could use to move forward or back if you wanted that movement. My understanding for that was it was a great form of DPS once you're set up. You got your triple buffs after working on those, and now you're looking to maximize your DPS. So maybe you trap or knock the monster down, and then do the infinite combo at a weak point. As a basic concept anyway. So I was surprised to hear that that combo was apparently changed. Still an option, but not working in the same way, not as smooth to use. Those of you who tested this properly and really know, how was this functioning for you in comparison to the old way? It sounded a bit weird from the descriptions I heard. It makes me think of something I found with Switch Axe. So let me compare that to Switch Axe's zero sum discharge. Your basic combo there for great DPS in the old games was to use the sword combo into the attached zero sum. So you do the double slash, follow that with Heaven Ward Flurry, and then smoothly combo that into zero sum discharge to attach the monster and blow up at the right time, which felt really good when you're doing a combo on a down monster, and then as it's getting up you attach to maintain DPS and kind of ignore the monster. They removed that smooth transition, but why would they do something like that? Well, it's probably because they added the full release slash, which deals more damage than the zero sum, and is now the core of your max DPS loop with that weapon. So they don't want you to waste your time and energy on zero sum use, because they want you to use full release slash instead. What's going to be an effective way to encourage that? Well, remove the old combo that used to work well with zero sum. That's seemingly the issue I see with Insect Glaive. If that feels heavy-handed and bad to you, then I guess it's going to feel bad. But if you think, hey, it makes sense to push us to new stuff, the new gameplay loop, to reduce or even remove the old stuff that would be bad to use here, fair enough. If that is how you feel, then you're probably going to be fine with a new Insect Glaive, and that's only good news. But actually, you know, is this new Insect Glaive bad? That's kind of an important question. And I think no is the answer. The concept is cool. The Kinsect fighting alongside you with a more advanced version of, say, assist Kinsects. The various animations like the mount finisher being funny, the spiral leap up spin special, the charge attacks, the Kinsect shotgun blast build and spend aggressively, flowing around and dancing mid-fight. The new way you gather the extracts is way simpler and easier. The original way was certainly more skillful and challenging, but in my opinion it felt bad, like it always felt clunky. I thought that was one of the worst parts of the weapon, and ultimately you just had to get over it and learn how to do it. For them to aggressively simplify that, I think that's a good idea, it's just, you know, the execution's important. Obviously I'm speaking from the perspective of a casual Insect Glaive player though. I pick it up and play with it sometimes, it's not my long-term main. So I know I'm coming at it from that kind of perspective. But one thing I do want to kind of recognize is the fact that we were playing in a beta where we had limited armor in terms of sets and skills. So in the case of Kinsects, aren't we using the base worst one right now? That's going to change in the full release when you can change them and maybe pick a faster one or one that fits with this playstyle better. So maybe that'll also make a big difference, let alone the skills from armor and so on. And while that's probably true, on the other hand, no matter what way you look at it, losing parts of your kit, like say the messing with a combo or say the aerial bounce being gone, that is ultimately less utility and in terms of the bounce, a loss of a very fun aspect of the weapon. Is it worth it to exchange that for new mechanics like charging or the new moves and combo? Clearly, even if those are good, people are going to be upset about the loss of the bounce. It's the weapon fantasy. I do think this version of Insect Glaive is cool, but maybe not refined. And obviously, a big change, maybe too much at once. I think it would be a sign of good faith if they returned the bounce for those who want to do it, even if it's very clearly suboptimal as usual. I mean, you can choose to play a weapon however you want. Optimally using the best tools only at the right time, or just using the stuff that's fun because you wanna. It makes me wonder what they might change about not just the glaive really from beta to launch, but every weapon. Will this testing period result in changes from beta to launch? I hope so. But let me know your thoughts down below. I hope we can talk about this normally without big drama or arguments or whatever, but I know this is the internet. But if I could give you this question in a more healthy way, how did you leave feedback about it at the end of the beta feedback survey? How did you put it there to help them understand what you'd like to see change about the weapon in this version? So let us know. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.